This is a full book summary of Lewis Carroll's Alice Through the Looking Glass. Now here it's the, not as widely acclaimed sequel of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Unfortunately, it was not exactly a flop, but it never became as popular as its predecessor. Sure, it was all a dream, just the same. It was Alice, and Alice is slightly older. She is still not yet the age of 8, apparently. But throughout all these ordeals, she goes ahead and gets through another kind of adventure. So let's get this started with. We start off with our Alice. Our Alice is over here, and she is in her room. She's doing a little knitting, and then as soon as she gets into her knitting stuff, her kitten comes in and tries to. That's the terrible kitten. Her kitten comes in and tries to ruin the mall, and it does so repeatedly. She goes ahead and fixes it again and gets ruined again until she decides that she has enough, and then she took up her kitten, and her kitten was all like, meow, and obviously she was slightly annoyed by it, other than the fact that she knew that the cats can't help it. They can only say those kind of sounds when it comes to talking and communicating their ideas. And so she went ahead and pushed the kitten in front of the looking glass, aka the mirror, and made it look at its own reflection as if to go ahead and see what it has done wrong. And then suddenly, of course, she goes ahead and she's somehow able to get through into the mirror world, reminding me of Ruki a lot. As soon as she got into the mirror world, she would go ahead and find herself in like a mirror dimension, where she saw a chessboard that was live and was trying to be playing by itself, with all the red queens and the kings going ahead and trying to move across the board slowly at a time, mostly because the queen went ahead and was trying to get to the other side of the board. She ended up not being one of the most suitable and most best positions she ever could be in. What happened next was Alice went ahead and picked up the red queen. I should probably draw red for that, and then placed her in the position that she wanted to be, and she was very surprised, mostly because she was invisible to the chess pieces. And then she did the same to the red king, slowly, and then he was all like frightened by it because his was much lower than the red queen's. And then she goes ahead and picks up a little book and realizes that it's written in mirror writing. Instead of A, B, C, D, E, it's written like this. E, D, C, B, A. And then she goes ahead and holds it up to the looking glass so that it goes ahead and recorrects itself into A, B, C, D, and E. What happens next is she goes outside and she walks into a bunch of flower lilies, and in those flower lilies they go ahead and talk to her after realizing that the ground is very, very hard. She goes ahead and just asks them how they can talk, and that they're like, all flowers can talk. Why aren't the flowers in my garden talking? And then they're like, look at the ground, it's very, very hard. The ones your flowers are growing in, it's in soft ground, so they're always sleeping. And so Alice thinks, hey, that actually makes a lot of sense. She ends up having several nice conversations with them until she goes ahead and leaves for that hill. And then as soon as she gets there, she like tries to get there. On the way, she goes ahead and meets the Red Queen, who has now grown about half a head taller than her. Of course, the Red Queen goes ahead and is all like, okay, what do you want to do? I want to go ahead and become a queen. And then she's all like, well, my daughter wants to be a pawn, but she's a little too young. All right, I'll let you go ahead and become a queen. Here are your instructions. You must go ahead and start from the second square since you're a pawn. Not the first move. Pawns can move 2 squares above, so you can get to the 4th square really quick. So that's where you go by train and yada yada. All those instructions get to the 5th, 6th, and 7th, and then like the 7th square, you're gonna meet a knight or something to escort you to the 4th, and as soon as you get escorted to the 4th, you would go ahead and get to the 8th square, and in the 8th square you would become queen, or at least crowned queen officially. So obviously Alice goes ahead and goes on that trip, and then as she witnesses the Red Queen going ahead and moving so fast that she arrives to the 8th square. Apparently, allegedly, she arrives to the 8th square, and that actually kind of makes sense if you think about it. Queens can move on chessboard, can move any length as much as they want, as any length in any direction. Also, albeit they cannot change the direction in which they are doing in between. So they can even go ahead, get from one part of the board to the next part of the board really, really quickly. So Alice sets off on a journey as a pawn, and to go ahead and get to the 8th square. First, she gets to the 3rd square, and there she finds a little train, and then she gets on board of the train, and then they're all like, ticket please, and she's like, there was no ticket station. They're like, get your ticket from there, and she doesn't go get the ticket anyway, but like she stays on the train, and then they go all the way to the 4th square. Apparently, though, after having some conversations with the several looking glass animals, such as a knot and a man dressed in the white paper, the train apparently literally jumps over a basin. Only one basin, they say. Ah, it's fine, it's only one basin. And then lands, and then Alice herself being queasy, and then lands, and then goes and gets off and arrives at the 4th square. She goes through the 4th square, meeting the White Queen, and the White Queen is in like a bunch of wool, and then she goes ahead and she's realizing something. But first, of course, we go ahead and ignore all that, and then we find her going ahead and meeting Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the little twins, right here. She knows which one is which because on their collar, one of them says D and the other says Dumb. So they go ahead and have this little talk, and then they decide to, hey, I want to fight you. It's like, but there's no sword. I'll use the umbrella then. And then they go ahead and prepare to fight. And then Alice is like, oh, there's a black crow over there. And then Tweedledee and Tweedledum are like, there's a crow. And then they run away. Alice runs off into like the trees to go ahead and prevent the crow from taking her. And then later, on the 5th square, I believe, she goes ahead, or maybe that was the 6th, she goes ahead and meets the White Queen. It's most likely the 5th. And the White Queen goes ahead, and she's all like, she's in this water stuff, and then they go ahead and get out together. Later on, she apparently metamorphosizes into a little sheep, which Alice is supposed to buy wares from, and then she goes ahead and buys these wares from her after having lots and lots of consideration, and then she goes ahead and proceeds to leave. At this point, she's in the 6th square, and that's where she goes ahead and meets Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty goes ahead and tries to accuse her of being a spy just because she knows the poem. Humpty Dumpty was on the wall, and then he fell and it shattered, and all the king's men could not no matter how hard they tried, could not put him back together. That kind of that poem, and he accuses her of being a spy. After convincing him that she is not a spy, he's all like, okay, get out now. And then she leaves. She takes her leave. As soon as she takes her leave, she goes ahead and meets the red. I should probably mention something. While she was back in Tweedledee and Tweedledum, she went ahead and saw the dozing of the Red King. And the Red King and Tweedledee and Tweedledum had already told her that maybe he was dreaming about her, and as soon as he wakes up, she would go ahead and disappear from this dream world. Or maybe she was dreaming about him. As soon as she wakes up, he would disappear from this dream world. We will obviously know who eventually wakes up first in either way. Okay, so that's it. Next thing that I'm gonna have to say about here is that we're going to, after the Waltz's wares and stuff, and then we get to the Lion and Unicorn, both fighting for, this is the Lion, and apparently this is the Unicorn. They go ahead and they fight for the crown of the White King, who refuses to give it to them anyway, even either side won. And then they're always in a draw. They go ahead and they end their battles and in a draw, and then she proceeds to keep going. Alice goes ahead and keeps going, and then she is about to be captured by a Red Knight. The Red Knight is all like, hey, you, stop. I'm going to capture you now. You better listen to me. And then the White Knight comes in and duels the White Knight, saying that, oh, I'm going to save this milady. And then the White Knight goes ahead and wins. The Red Knight is forced to flee, and then they go on this little journey through the forest. All the while, he's on his horse, and he keeps falling off his horse and always talking about stuff and his inventions all the time. Even when he was falling upside down and he was underneath some of these meadows, he keeps blabbing about his inventions. And Alice is all like, yeah, I'm dealing with a crazy lunatic here. And then she goes ahead and starts on her journey to the 8th square. And as soon as she gets into the 8th square, she becomes crowned a queen. And obviously, she is very, very happy about that. But then the White Queen and the Red Queen goes ahead and make their appearances, and they keep testing her in several of these ideas and little tests that they say will test her queenhood, when in reality it will probably just do nothing other than like make her into a little nonsensical little girl. Obviously, this does not go well with her in the dinner party, especially when they said, "Oh, you have to be introduced to food, but you cannot eat the food because eating someone who you've been introduced to is very rude." And so she saw this pudding and steak and stuff, and then they're all being introduced to her, and she's like, "Don't introduce them to me now. I want to eat them." And they're like, "Introduce them anyway. Here's a pudding. Say hi, pudding." And then they try to call the pudding away, and then she's all like, "Pudding, come back." And the pudding comes back, and then she proceeds to eat it. Also, the pudding itself complains that it hates being cut, even though it's been introduced to. At this point, Alice gets her temper out, and then she like knocks over the entire table, and then everyone shrinks. And then she goes ahead and proceeds to take the Red Queen into her hand and shake her, and to turn her into a kitten. And would you know it, the Red Queen really did turn into a kitten. Apparently, it was already a kitten. It was the very same kitten in chapter 1. Now, this is where Alice realizes that she was in dreamland all along, and she goes ahead and tells her kitten about her experiences in that dreamland. Obviously, the kitten isn't the best listener ever, but it does do its best to go ahead and meow to her every sentence. And it's here that the book ends with this very serious question. Remember the Red King I was talking to you about? Well, this is the dilemma now. Now, in the story, was it the Red King who was the one dreaming? Or was it Alice who was the one that was dreaming? Because if one stops dreaming, then the other just gets wiped away from existence. So, who do you think it was? In my personal opinion, it's Alice. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Hunter Shun. I hope to see you guys soon. Until next time, Shihana, peace. Bye bye.